Thank you for joining us. And if you're just joining the Polity, it's never too late, of course, to take a seat and sit. And of course, today we'll be talking about the post-mortem analysis on yesterday's judgment. Yesterday was the PEPT, and of course, the verdict was just in the favor of the rulings All Progressive Congress. That's in person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And joining me today to my left is Dr. Law, media consultant. Of course, not a new face in the studio. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and all right. And to my right is Kola Lakmini. Of course, he's equally not a new face, and he's an international human rights lawyer. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
All right, it's good to, of course, have two viable men that would be able to have intellectual conversations about this, because I'm sure our viewers are going to key in and stay tuned today. But my first question today, on one of the papers this morning, it was clearly stated that, of course, we all know that there's a faction in Labour Party where we have the Julius Abure faction, we have the Apapa faction. But then the Apapa faction have said they have come to, of course, say yes, the verdict from the court yesterday, they are in favor of it and they are fine with it. And then, according to a particular court, the Apapa faction is supposedly the legal chairman of Labour Party. But the Labour Party has come out to say they are going to, of course, proceed to the Court of Appeal to refute yesterday's judgment. But then, what is actually going to happen, given that you cannot actually take any legal process without the chairman of your party? Dr. Law, over to you.
Well, to the best of my knowledge,
Okay.
the subsisting judgment is in favor of Abure. You know, I haven't read the details, but that's what I think.
Okay.
And even if there is a conflict in judgment, it should be emanating from what you may call a court of a coordinated jurisdiction.
Okay.
High courts,
High
federal
court.
or state.
Okay.
You know, none can supersede.
Okay.
You know, until the Court of Appeal takes a decision, which will now determine which will stand, and ultimately the Supreme Court
Okay.
will have the final say.
Okay.
You see, Apapa particularly has been playing a spoiler's role. He cannot endorse a judgment that is against his party's candidate if he's really acting in good faith.
In good faith of the
There's no
party.
doubt that he's trying to mess up the process for P2B and for Labour.
Okay.
And but let it follow the right process.
Okay.
And but you mentioned that if the political party does not endorse the appeal to the Supreme Court,
The chairman.
I really don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, because even if I recall the case of Buhari, I think in 2007, when Edwin Umezoke was national chairman.
Okay.
The party withdrew from the case, but Buhari continued.
Continued.
You know, so even if the Labour Party, you know, withdraws from the case, I am not sure that there is an extant law, you know, or yes, law that would stop the candidate from proceeding. You know, ultimately, that is why I made mention of one instance,
Okay.
that of former President Muhammadu Buhari in 2007, when either 2003 or 2007, when Umezoke was national chairman of the ANPP, you know, under the platform that Buhari contested. It was that disagreement that led Buhari and his adherents, you know, to form the CPC, you know. But he challenged his, you know, his loss without his own political party. So I believe that if that presidency is correct, P2B will go to Supreme Court, even without the Labour Party itself.
Okay, all right. Or do you affirm to what Dr. Lowe said?
Well, to a large extent, yeah. I think Lamidi Apapa is a Confucianist.
Okay.
He's been it's a someone. Chinua Achebe said, if you see a little bird dancing on the pathway, the drummer is in the nearby bush.
Okay.
He obviously has some people backing him,
Okay.
sponsors wanting to scuttle the process in the Labour Party and you know, confuse the system.
Okay.
Regarding who is going to sign, I didn't see him at the court yesterday. He wasn't there.
I
saw
Abure was in court,
I saw
yes.
the petitioner himself. Yeah, so that tells you something. I think the judgment is very clear. The judgment favors the Abure faction. It is not unusual to see people try to spin judgments these days. The courts might not be very unequivocal in some of his statements, and once the judge leaves a lacuna for you to try to misinterpret the judgment, you find the instance which Lamide Papa is trying to exploit. I don't think the judgment favors him.
Okay.
If he has any grounds, he should go to court. And you could see the rightful parties where the people in the court yesterday, the real chairman of Labour was in court with his candidates. And I don't see any reason why Labour Party would not want to challenge this. They've already said they were going to.
They already said yes.
So,
yeah, I've tried to say that. Okay, now
it would deepen our electoral laws.
Electoral laws. Okay, all right. Let's quickly dive into. I'd like to take out of what most of the judges in court yesterday, and I'll start with Justice Bolaji Yusuf. She said any serious candidates cannot and should never depend on INEC for electoral results. So, if we are not depending on INEC for electoral results, who are we supposed to depend on?
Well, okay.
I think you should go for things. Yes.
Well, I think what the judge was trying to say, his lordship was trying to say that you don't need INEC to produce these results for you. It is your election. You allege that you've been robbed. You gather your evidence yourself, which is what Natasha Putti did in Kogi State. And she was able to prove that she was disenfranchised, and the court ruled in her favor that she was a lawfully elected senator for her district. I think that's what this lordship was trying to say. They don't rely on INEC to produce the evidence. You assert proofs. That's the position of the law. Okay. So if you say you've been disenfranchised, prove it. You don't, even though INEC is supposed to be an umpire, but bring
proof.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Over to you, Dr. Lo.
Yeah, well, I think yes, partly that, but I also think that it's quite unfair, of the tribunal, his lordship, to take that position.
Okay.
I had expected, the tribunal to have a word for INEC. INEC is the regulator here, the regulatory institution. It is incumbent on them to prove how they delivered Tinubu as the rightfully elected president of Nigeria. Okay. They should be able to make available the records. But again, I've gone through the Electoral Act 2022, and there is no express provision compelling INEC to produce, evidence on how the process is leading up to. So I think that is what they are exploiting. Okay. And of course, from EC8A, I think the one that is given at the polling units, the political party agents are entitled to duplicate copies
of the form,
authenticated by INEC, therefore admissible in the tribunal. Yes, that is what his lordship was trying to say. That look, you need to hold on to that your copy and make it available. If you recall, the case of Hope Uzodinma versus Emeke Hedioha in the Supreme Court, that was what delivered hope, because Hope was able to bring the duplicate copies of the results in the disputed 367 polling units. And when INEC was not able to counter it, the Supreme Court relied on those documents.
Especially when it was tendered by a police officer, which was the police officer was present there.
You see the problem. So, the lordship was right that yes, you need to. You just have to keep your own defense intact by gathering your own evidence to enable you validate your claim. Because Peter B particularly said, we won this election and we are going to prove it. Where is the evidence? That's the question here now. And of course, you know that INEC has already descended into the arena as an interested party. That's the problem. Losing that credibility of an umpire, and that is why both Labour, APM and PDP all joined INEC as a party to the dispute. So because INEC is also struggling to prove its innocence, that he did his work well, as in full compliance of the rules and regulations. That's it. You don't see, you will see that INEC is acting as an opponent, even belligerent to some extent, not cooperative, because even before INEC was able to release some of the results in their custody, duplicates, the printouts from the IREV and all that, it took quite some time, which of course placed the petitioners in a very serious disadvantage. So, that's what the judge is saying. But I also think that they ought to have tidied INEC, that you should make such documents. But
okay, Dr. Law, sorry to cut you short. I mean, a few months back, I remember vividly that the Labour Party was asked to get some certain documents, and then INEC was subpoenaed. But then INEC said they needed to pay for some of these documents to be provided. I mean, there was lots of back and they paid, but they didn't actually get back to people to say, oh, they paid, because I know there was lots of back and forth. You have something to say?
Yeah, because Dr. Law actually hits the nail on the head.
Okay.
Even though at some point in time he had sympathies for one of the parties to say INEC should provide this. Okay. That's what I can deduce. What the judge is trying to say is to stick to the law stricto sensu, as the law provides. Okay. And it is the same line of reasoning and logic that dictates what INEC did. Forget what the chairman, Professor Yakubu Mahmood, was saying, oh, we will upload the results to be in real time, this and that. When they didn't do so, the heavens cannot fall, because the law does not provide for such. And that was why the court said the electoral law does not dictate how INEC does not dictate the electoral transmission. So INEC has not broken any law. They've broken the promise, but they've not broken any law. And it's the same thing with what Dr. Law was saying, that there's a lacuna in that law. So except we go and fix it on how INEC produces results, but there's nothing compelling INEC there. So we can't say they've broken the law. If they had, then the judge will have chided them and say you broke the law in the judgment.
That's the problem.
Okay, so that has been dismissed.
No, it's deliberate by the politicians. It's deliberate because, apparently there was a very holistic law that was presented to Parliament, and it was watered down. And this is the reason why it was watered down, because it means that we would have been able to have credible elections. We will be able to change who the lawmakers are and who our executive are. And the politicians don't like that power to be in the hands of the electorate. So anything that can make them water it down. Otherwise, we vote for Big Brother electronically. We conduct financial transactions on our phone. All these sophisticated gadgets now, it recognizes your face, recognizes your thumbprints, recognizes everything. So what is the big deal in voting electronically and transmitting it? But they won't, because they know that they will be in jeopardy.
Okay, all right. Now let's get into the final verdict, even though we're still going to go back and forth. Having considered that all three petitions are devoid of merit, I hereby dismiss. Well, I'm acting as the lordship here today. Having considered that all three petitioners are devoid of merit, I hereby dismiss all petitions. I affirmed the declaration by INEC that Ahmed Bola Tinubu is duly elected president of Nigeria. What do you have to say about the verdict?
Well, you see, we have a very deep-seated problem here. The Electoral Act itself has many gaping holes being exploited by everybody, including INEC. And until those loopholes are plugged, you will never have credible election in Nigeria. Number one is the law that prescribes 180 days for the tribunal to deliver judgment. Which overshoots May 29 handover date. And because the Constitution does not contemplate any lacuna, because of expiration of the tenure of the incumbent, the implication of that is they have to swear in the president-elect. Nobody does that anywhere in the world except Nigeria. You swear in a president-elect, he becomes the substantive president of Nigeria, not acting. It means that you have handed over the whole country and everything thereof and therein to an individual whose election is yet to be determined. Do you see where the problem is? Now, when you swear in a president-elect and you have a tribunal set up by an arm of government in looking into his own matter, these are human beings and all that. No matter how you look at it, in a presidential democracy, the president is number one. All the arms are under the executive, ultimately under the president, whether we like it or not. You know, so these things have their overarching implications. So you can see that until you fix some of these fundamentals, you haven't actually started. That is number one. Number two, when you say that INEC reserves the right to determine the mode of collation, transmission, and everything, concerning electoral process, it means that INEC can decide on anything, anytime, abandoning its own process, its own guidelines, and so on. And that was exactly what happened in 2023 presidential election. We were there in the civil society organizations pushing for electoral reforms. We had only one thing in mind. We wanted to bring in electronic component into it. One of the prime movers was Professor Mahmoud Yacob. He was pushing this. Some of the clauses you find in this Electoral Act 2022 were supplied by Mahmoud himself. All the promises were transmitting real time. They are promises, they are not laws. Do you see where the problem is? So when people say that Mahmoud did not keep his promises, we're not talking about promises.
And we can't hold him accountable to that.
And that is exactly what the tribunal was saying. That there is no place that says that, look, there must be electronic transmission. However, when you check the electronic guidelines, issued by INEC, it was made pursuant. If you see the opening glare, it says that the electoral guidelines 2022 are made pursuant to the Electoral Act. That means it's a derivative of the Electoral Act. However, it does not on its own stand as a law.
It's not a law.
That's where the problem is. So, for reasons best known to them, they abandoned the electronic transmission of results. Because if you go to section 64 subsection 4, says the collation officer shall collate, announce, subject to verification and confirmation of results uploaded from the polling units. Do you know that the IREV you and I talk about is not even a collating, is not a collation portal. And
that is why we do not even have full results right now.
So you say how they ambushed Nigerian electorate and masses, made fool of everybody, because that's why I keep blaming the opposition. They are not organized. They are not strategic. They ought to know that IREV is not a collation portal. They should have asked, if you say you have to, that is to give effect to the express provision of that section 64 subsection 4, that you will upload to where? There was no collation portal.
IREV was not clearly stated in that.
That is the point there. If there was no collation portal, then that section I just quoted becomes irrelevant. It cannot be effectual, because there is no place you would upload that will enable the collation officer to compare the physical paper with what was transmitted in advance. That was what the tribunal was saying yesterday. There's no such provision.
Yeah. I think Professor Yakubu.
Okay, over to you.
I think Professor Yakubu Mahmoud ended up scamming everybody. Professor Yakubu Mahmoud and INEC ended up scamming everybody, because we were just listening to promises. We're not. You keep the eye on the law.
On the law.
Yes, the tribunal, or the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal is not going to rely on audio promises.
And not emotions either.
No, emotions don't have any place in law, nor do audio promises. It's the law. Everything was being determined by the Electoral Act and the Constitution yesterday, and also precedents of other cases which had been determined by courts before.
Well, some persons have said it is victory for democracy. Do you agree with that?
The what?
It is victory for democracy.
Who said so?
Well, some persons that said.
Well, I presume for the victors, they would say so. And for the person who lost, he would say it was a robbery of democracy. It all depends on which side of the divide that you are in. What appears as 6 to one person may appear as 9 to the other person.
Okay, all right.
Well, for me, yes, democracy is not a dash, it's work in progress. I want to see a more robust opposition. Opposition is what gives meaning to democracy. I want to see a more robust civil society, even labor organizations, to be able to provide alternative pathway. You see, once you are under what we may call a state capture, because that's what happens everywhere. A group captures the state and they want to retain power. Do you understand that? They will not easily allow somebody prize off that power they are already holding away from them. That is why you need very virile, organized opposition to be able to provide a very clear alternative pathway. If we had the proper opposition in place, they should have been able to see these loopholes. And note that the Electoral Act has these gaping holes that needed to be plugged. Were they really active during the amendment process? They weren't. The people that were driving this, so they weren't opposition political parties. They were civil society organizations. That was opposition. It was opposition.
I think the PDP.
Do you understand that?
The PDP hasn't realized that it is no longer a party in government. They're finding it challenging, having been in power for about 16 years, they're finding it challenging to evolve into an opposition party. And Labour Party, which turned out to be a credible third party, is imploding via the Confucianist factional chairman that is, distracting them. Because it's weakening, and I do believe that some persons are sponsoring this diversion to weaken the Labour Party. NNP is mainly stuck in Kano. Well,
they see the issue of NNPP because, of course, they say they have a court case presently where they have factions now equally, where they said the presidential candidate is suspended him over.
It was reinstated almost immediately.
Suspended. He's expelled.
But it was reinstated by another court.
It was reinstated by another court, but then now we have the faction issue because one faction is saying he was engaged in anti-party activities.
But he has been reinstated, and that judgment subsists until the Court of Superior Authority overturns it. And you can see what we're saying. There's the opposition is in splinter. Kwankwaso effectively neutered APC and Labour Party in Kano and controlled Kano State. He is nothing but a factional leader. He's not been able to have that national outreach. And then you have PDP and Labour Party splitting opposition votes that should have been united. And as I said a couple of days ago, when you put all these three parties' votes together, they overwhelmed the votes of APC, and that's why it looks as if the president Bola Tinubu is not popular, because when all these votes, when you unite them, you would see that he wouldn't have been president, but he knew what he was doing. It's the same thing that he did for Muhammadu Buhari when he engineered this process. Muhammadu Buhari used to be a factional leader. He is a factional leader. I mean, he proved it when he was president. Everything was Daura first, then Katsina, and then the North, before everybody else. So that was the kind of person he was. He was stuck in 1984. But you would see that Muhammadu Buhari was always winning overwhelmingly in the North. 12 million votes. He couldn't stretch a handshake across the Niger until Bola Tinubu devised this formula that you're not going to win. You are regional, we would go with you. So the West went with the North and delivered the president for him. So even when, it seemed as if Peter Obi was a popular candidate, maybe he won the popular vote, or, captured people's hearts, but the opposition was not united. If Atiku was not so selfish, since he had been running, and in the last election before this one, before 2023, Obi was his vice, he could have stepped down for Obi, and there will have been less diversion of these votes. They were all wasted votes because it allowed Bola Tinubu to coast to victory.
Do you agree with that?
No, well, largely so. Opposition, needs to really get its act together. And until that is done, you will have any serious challenge against the APC. I say this advisedly. One is that if the grounds, advanced by the tribunal yesterday will hold against the petitioners in the Supreme Court, there is little hope. You know why I said this? One is the ruling that you cannot, apart from the tribunal saying that there is no express provision for electronic transmission, is one fundamental position that has affected, in fact, is what has provided the fatality to all these cases.
Okay.
If you look at it from the position that if the tribunal had held that it was incumbent, it was lawful, indeed compulsory, for INEC to electronically transmit, it would have affected
that would have been a game changer.
It would have been a game changer. So unless that is upturned in the Supreme Court,
and it's unlikely,
it's unlikely.
It's not part of the law.
Now, number two, do you understand that? Unless it's upturned in the Supreme Court, that becomes a problem. Then number two, there was another ruling that shocked me. The discountenancing of witnesses, evidences, and all that. And one major statement that was made by the judge that read out, that struck out most of those witnesses' positions and depositions. He said that the written statements of these witnesses ought to accompany the petition.
The petition
is a major blow. If that is a lawful position and the tribunal was right to that extent, it means you can't upturn it in the Supreme Court. No. And until you bring back the submissions of those witnesses, such evidences that were struck out because of the time they were filed. They were filed, during independency of the cases. They ought to come, they ought to come with the petitions. That is what I took away. Okay. These are some of the things that that I expect should be upturned in the Supreme Court. Otherwise, there will be a problem. And finally, opposition need to work together. Do you understand that? When Obi, for example, said, we won this election and we are going to prove it, I had expected that he would provide the tribunal with polling unit results given to his own agents. But you should also recall that Labour didn't have full complements of polling unit agents before the 2023 polls. That is why I had earlier advocated that Labour and PDP must work together, so that where Labour lacks some such documents, PDP may have, and they would fall back on each other complementarily. Yes. And by so doing, they will be able to present full evidence before the tribunal. Because don't forget, we are talking about 176,000 polling units here. You don't need to tackle all. You take the states where you believe you were really strong. When you were shortchanged, because they will say, if you say your votes were stolen, tell us where. And if you say you won a majority of the lawful votes, tell us the lawful votes. Because what INEC gave us as the lawful votes, you are disputing it. If you dispute it, then you have to provide
of yours.
You have to provide, so we'll be able to compare. Do you see the problem? So these three issues, opposition must address them comprehensively at the Supreme Court if they will make a headway.
Well, I think...
Okay. Thank you.
To buttress what Dr. Law was saying, you see, election petitions are what they call sui generis in law. They are special.
Yeah.
So they're time-bound, and you must comply within that time. Otherwise, technicality will knock you out. If you don't file within time, or whatever, or that's just it. You cannot, there's no allowance for extension of time. And that is, well, obvious for many reasons. We don't want to bog our nations under the labor of election and petition. And there has to be an end to litigation.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, I think it was a technical flaw on the part of the legal team by not accompanying the statements of the witnesses.
Yeah.
And you could also hear the judge or their lordships saying yesterday and discountenancing quite a number of things as hearsay evidence. Because if you the person who made the statement ought to be there. You can't be relying on he said, they did, and then an overview. Generally, if you remember a couple of months ago, before the elections, and Peter Obi eventually joined Labour Party. Let me refresh your memory that do you remember the word structure? And everybody was saying they don't have structure. You don't have structure. The party does not have structure. And Peter Obi came out and said, oh, is it the people are the structure? And I would have expected that what Dr. Law was saying, that you need to have people in all these places, agents and everything. And that this was what the two big parties were chiding or making jest of Labour.
But he felt it was structure based on politicians and certain places.
He's saying that people are the structure, but you need to structure, those people need to be known as agents, you know, and nothing goes for free in Nigeria. It was a novel thing that Labour did. We know they give shishi, and a lot of people wanted, you know, to work because they wanted a significant change. But you will also find out there were 50 columnists amongst them. We saw some videos on WhatsApp saying, "Oh, we haven't received anything. Agents haven't gotten their money." So that money thing in Nigerian politics needs to be addressed. To a certain extent, I'm not a great fan of Emefiele, the former CBN governor, but that was what he tried to do. You know, by de-emphasizing the movement of money and all that. Unfortunately, what happened was people just switched from the naira to the US dollar to be able to pay the agents.
The agency, Okay, all right. Still on PEPT. Well, one more last one before we move into economy issues in Nigeria. FCT has no special votes. So we spent like a ridiculous amount of 2 months to dissect this issue of FCT because, of course, Dr. Lowe, I think we discussed it because it was an issue of.
It was a matter of
36 states and
that matter had been settled. I think way before these elections. The Constitution itself has said that the FCT will be treated as any other state. Maybe the Constitution was not very clear when it comes to whoever, you know, what caused the confusion was the conjunctive word. You must win this and blah, 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 blah. But the Constitution made itself clear in another section when it says that the FCT will be treated as another state. This is because the people of the FCT are no more special than anybody else. It will be a violation of the Constitution because they will be discriminating against people from Niger State, Benue State, if the votes of people who live in Abuja count more. It is mischief to want to say, oh, whoever has to be president of Nigeria needs to win Abuja because it's the center of unity or whatever. The courts have made it abundantly clear. And there have been decisions where they said the FCT should be treated as a 37th state. There is no special status to the Federal Capital Territory. The votes here don't weigh more than the votes in Cross River.
Yeah, well, you see, generally, I told that same line, but with a bit of variation, right? You have indigenes of Abuja that have no other state to call their own. Unlike some of us who have states, we have our own states, even though we live in Abuja. And it means that while voting for a governor, we can do so for our states, themselves cannot. Do you get the point here now? You know, what that suggests or means is that the president doubles as the governor of Abuja. You get that separate logic.
But the president delegates these powers to the
FCT
minister.
Wait, just wait 1 minute. That is the issue. The power delegated is a power exercised on behalf of the originator, the appointer. The appointer here is the president.
The president.
Do you understand that? It means that we have as FCT minister today is the Buhari we can see around here, is the Tinubu we can see around here now. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
What that means is that, because he is delegated, the power still resides with the owner, the repository of that power is the president of the Republic of Nigeria. The point I'm trying to draw out here is this, that the logic why people were thinking that hand, extends to the FCT being looked at as a special case is because of the indigenous, because of the fact that the president will have to act as both as president and as governor of FCT, which we in practice call the minister of Abuja. Once you deduce this, and deduct it from the overall argument, I will not accept that FCT should be treated as a special case. That means that that section of the Constitution will have to be amended. It has to be amended to remove the ambiguity. And you need to also deal with that fact that the FCT people need to elect who governs them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
They have a senator.
No, the senator doesn't govern them. The senator is a lawmaker.
The senator represents them.
He represents them, he doesn't govern them.
I might be wrong, but I think the whole idea of appropriating this area, even though there were indigenous people who populated that area before, the whole idea was to pick somewhere in the center of Nigeria, making it accessible to everybody else. So by that act, I think we have even negated the natives being there. The land might have belonged to them before, but it doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to the whole of Nigeria. That is the whole purpose of the FCT.
Correct.
So,
but they are here. So what do you do?
So we'll give them a representative. They have a minister. They have a senator. Because of the peculiar way which the FCT came about.
And let's not forget that FCT is the only state that has its own minister.
Yes, so the minister is supposed to be like the governor. That's what I'm saying. The minister is supposed to be like the governor. They have a senator, and we'll treat it like any other state, the 37th state. There's no special status. The votes here don't override everybody else's votes.
But 24 states is not 2/3 of 37.
37.
Yes.
So you need to amend the Constitution. Well, you just have to amend the Constitution because as it is, but we have to admit it.
It's a work
that there is a problem with that clause, because when you say 24 states, that means 2/3. That is what the Constitution says. But once you regard FCT as a state, it becomes 37. 24 is not 2/3 of 37.
I get the logic you're trying to say.
That's it. So we need to really,
I like to strike out the
we have to
conjunction and yes.
Do you understand that? So that we know we're dealing with 36 here, and not 37.
37.
If they need to either move the figure to 25.
Of 37 states, or of 36 states, and the FCT.
And the FCT. So that when you say 2/3,
36 states with the FCT. I don't know.
They need to cure that clause. The clause is ambiguous. And I'm sure that the makers of the law, of that particular law, I'm not sure they say that they do like this.
Exactly, that's the
one that they have said is an opportunity for us to cure it.
Yeah, we didn't have a presidential candidate that was this unpopular. that would not, because what happened is all the three opposition parties that really made their presence felt, like I said, NNP, LP, and all that, when you count all their votes, it means that the president is unpopular. It's a very narrow race, and that's why people feel very bitter that he didn't win. It was almost, it was that close. We could have as well had a hung parliament, as I say in the UK. we would have had a hung presidency and we'll have had a rerun. But he took his chances. He knew that the opposition was split. He knew he could run a wedge through them. It's like when you have animals or dogs and you just throw the bone this way and let me pass, and that's what happened. They were busy struggling with the bone, and Bola Tinubu just
Yes, it's a strategist.
Well, and the good part is, I feel more Nigerians are more informed right now, because now you never see a layman argue about 25% in FCT, and I'm wondering, where did that come from?
Well, it would be nice that the Labour Party and the opposition is going. I think we need the Supreme Court to
really tell us
again, especially now.
Yeah,
because the hitherto judgment that's regarded the FCT as 37 state was not so popular. But now, with everybody's eyes and wanting to know what went on and all, and we'll finally.
So all the eyes on the judiciary, all eyes on the Supreme Court.
Yesterday, all eyes on the judiciary. Did you even see some of the journalists and some of the lawyers, everybody? When they say all eyes on the judiciary,
this is not the time to fire shots at
it's not shots. I fired the shots at the lawyers too. I mean, it's the evidence was there.
Sleeping yesterday.
Yeah, it was everybody.
We had chairman of parties sleeping in court yesterday.
It is no mean feat. You should give kudos to the judges that sat down
and around 10, and as of 6 they were still there.
Up till almost 8 o'clock or something. I was still on the road of a car. So that's a long time to sit and to read judgments. It's no, we must give credit to those judges. That's a lot of work.
It makes us wonder what's going to happen at the appeal court.
The Supreme Court. It's not the difference. The result is not going to be different. I mean, Dr. Law had broken it down earlier. It will be very difficult to.
You don't cure those things.
There's nothing to cure anymore, because the judgment at the Supreme Court is going to be based on what's as forwarded from the lower court. So the only, you see, when you are reviewing, when you go on appeal, it's a review. It's like a senior teacher reviewing what an examiner had written before. So it's like when you contest your school SAT or something. Oh, I should have gotten more than this. You're not writing the exam again. You've already written it. What they are looking at is the marking scheme. Did the examiner follow the scheme and all? That's just what is.
No new evidence.
Nothing. They're just going to review the judgment.
Just a compiled report of what is happening.
They transmit the records, and you will see whether my lords at the presidential election petition, which is almost like the equivalent of a court of appeal, because you can see all the judges that court of appeal. They'll just look. Did they make the right decision? It's an open and short case at the Supreme Court. If they have made some errors, the Supreme Court will say so, but no new evidence. All those flaws that the lordships identified, hearsay evidence struck out. You can't tell them to be admitting hearsay evidence at the Supreme Court. You didn't accompany this with your statements. How do you expect the judge to make a decision when there's no written thing to?
Well, now let's move away from that, because I know that's still going to be an issue. And then everybody forgot our president is actually 100 days in office already over the week. Of course, the PEPT overshadowed most of what has happened since May 29. But then one of the biggest issues right now, let's not talk about fuel subsidy. Federal government increases price of prepaid meters, and a single-phase meter is going to cost about 82,000 naira, and a three-phase is going to cost 143,000 naira. Given the state of the economy right now, do you think we should actually be dealing with this?
Well, you've asked a triple-loaded question there. You talked about 100 days of the president.
Yeah.
You talked about the state of the economy. And then you talked about the meters. So let's take the 100 days of the president first. I think there's nothing to write home about in the first 100 days. There's no significant change in the economy. Oh, we do have a significant change in the economy. The economy nosedived. Look at how much we used to buy petrol and everything. Look at the cost. I think the 4 tomatoes cost like $1,000 in some cities. People are hungry. People are hungry. And have you seen the amount of private owners who have turned into kabu drivers now? When they're going to work and they just, because how are you going to buy the fuel? And your salary has not changed, So the economy has taken a nosedive. Let's not mince words. We all know this, okay? I think that it could have done better for someone who has been angling and positioning himself to be president. It looked unprepared to me. It seems as if, I've always wanted to be a president, this and that. It's just lip service. It could have hit the ground running. And I said something a couple of days ago. The markets react to this thing. The JP Morgans, the Goldman Sachs, the stock exchange. When you're lackadaisical and it takes almost 60 days for you to let us know who's running the economy, who is doing it, you're unprepared. you're unprepared, and you campaigned for about 6 months. At that point in time, even if you are going to be last-minute mergers and acquisitions, so to speak, okay, instead of choosing this person as a Minister of Arts, I can substitute. It's momentary. It doesn't take 60 days to do that. You should have a list. You should have 4 lists of potential people. You don't wait 60 days to do all that. So this is a reaction. The markets are reacting to it happened under Muhammadu Buhari as well. And investors will pull. That's what they did. They took their money away under because it's uncertain. And then with all the brouhaha involving Emefiele and Bawa, the rule of law has gone to shambles. Well, this man is behaving like a dictator himself, and he shouldn't be. And I still don't understand why we're still having Nnamdi Kanu in detention. His trial seems not to be going anywhere. There are so many things that you could have dealt with in the first 100 days that would have made everybody peaceful and assuage the feelings of the nation. I know Dr. Law would like to different some stuff there.
No, but my views are not too different, not far from your position. I would only add this. You see, I believe that there are 2 wrong-headed policies that it brought on that must be rethought, possibly cancelled. And we just have to do so because I don't see any other way the economy will get back on its feet again. Subsidy. We have often said that subsidy needs to go. But the question is this the only way you can remove the subsidy? Are you really ready to remove the subsidy? As at the time you did, even now, I believe that subsidy cannot be removed in Nigeria without doing something about local refining capacity. Nigeria is the only crude producing country in the world that doesn't have a functional refinery. Not one. Meanwhile, as far back as 1976, Nigeria had 3 major refineries that took care of our local needs and was even able to spare something for other neighboring countries. But now you can't say the same. All we had is that Port Harcourt refinery will be coming back on stream in December. You and I know it's not going to be possible. We had that by July of 2023, that Dangote refinery will come on board. This is September.
It's not going to work.
It's not
going to work even in 2024.
Yeah, maybe 2024.
What that means is that President Muhammadu Buhari, as he then was, commissioned among completed projects.
Yeah.
Abracadabra. They pulled wool over our eyes. Now, and until you have 2-3 refineries working, Dangote refinery working, you will not be able to say that you can remove a fuel subsidy. You can't even rely on a Dangote refinery. You know why? He's a private businessman, and he will sell to you the way he buys the crude, unless of course you go into a kind of barter arrangement with him where you give him crude, he gives you refined fuel and all that. But by and large, you need to have some capacity in place before you'll be able to contemplate full subsidy removal. I'm against that. I still believe we need to do something about our fuel subsidy.
Yeah.
Worse is even naira flotation. You cannot float the naira. Do you understand that? You are not the pound, you're not the dollar, you're not the euro that may stand out there undefended and they do well. You don't have export base. We export basically nothing beyond the crude. I was looking at some papers the other day, and I was shocked to discover that Nigeria export is still 75% crude.
Crude here.
What that means is the Nigerian economy that is import dependent is indirectly dependent on the behavior of the crude in the international market. And you are floating your naira. How can the naira survive this? See, very basic definition of economics will tell you that if you want the naira to be as strong as the dollar, export more.
Exactly.
than you import. You don't need a professor of economics to teach you this. So if this is the reality, and you know that we can't export more than we import, even in a decade, we are not in a position to float the naira. So even if we don't do anything about the fuel subsidy, right, the federal government will have to cancel, okay, let's not say cancel, suspend the floating of the naira. We are not in a position to float the naira now, and you are doing so in combination, with another behemoth anti-masses policy, which is a fuel subsidy removal. There is something sinister about the fuel subsidy, which I want to quickly point out. I yield the space to my friend. You see, when Buhari came in, I keep talking about Buhari. When Tinubu came in, he met the fuel pump price at 197. They moved it to 540. More that was about 300%. He was unprecedented. It never happened in Nigeria. Before Nigerians could even settle to that, they moved it again to 617. Now there was an uproar. The government now said something that there will be no further increases. What does that tell you?
It means that
it tells you that the price is being fixed arbitrarily and not determined by the forces. The subsidy is back. So it means that either subsidy is back or there has never been subsidy in the first place. Do you see how
it means it's being subsidized?
There is something they are not telling you and I. There is something, because if you say that the price of crude is now determined by the price of crude in the international market, now if you Google, you find that the price of crude in the international market has moved towards $90. That's almost $10 since we introduced the fuel subsidy removal regime. What that tells you is that there has been significant increase in price in the international market, and yet our local price of a fuel is not responding to it. It means that they are doing something artificial. It's not dependent on the so-called market forces.
I think it's about time that the government should be looking at modular refineries, because this Dangote refinery thing, something is not adding up. And we also have the NNPC going to invest in a private business, which is the Dangote refinery. Okay. So it doesn't make any sense. Governments should act, as a matter of fact, hands off. We've proven that government cannot run the refineries. So, and we know that there are lots of illegal modular refineries operating in the Niger Delta. So maybe it's about time that we need to legalize it in the interest of our nation, so that we can start having more refined petroleum products. It doesn't make any sense for a producer of crude oil to send it abroad and then
back for some ridiculous amount.
Hard-earned money. Some people are feeding fat on our refineries not working, and that's the reason why it's very difficult to break that jinx now.
Okay, all right. That's what we'll wrap it up for the economy issues. We have a breaking story where I'm going to quote what the person said. The judiciary failed yesterday to restore confidence in free and fair elections. The judgment is respected but not accepted. That's coming from Atiku of the People's Democratic Party. Let's take a look at the video where he said most of this thing in a few minutes ago.
You hold so much to the courage and fearlessness decisions of our judiciary. Indeed, I am not stranger to legal matters. And I can say that I have a fair idea of how the court system works. All through my career as a politician, I have been a fighter and will continue to fight. And I must say that I have found the judiciary is the world pillar to rest on the pursuit of justice. The last presidential election and you know hold so much with the courage and fearlessness decisions of our judiciary. Indeed, I am no stranger to legal matters, and I can say that I have a fair idea of how the court system works. All through my career as a politician, I have been a fighter and will continue to fight. And I must say that I have found the judiciary is the worst pillar to rest on the pursuit of justice. The last presidential election in our country, and the way it was managed by the electoral umpire, the Independent National Electoral Commission, leaves behind an enviable precedent, which I believe.
Welcome back. Well, that is a video of Atiku Abubakar, the current, not the current, well, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, of course.
That's the current.
Making it known that they would be taking a step further to the Supreme Court. And thank God we're still in the studio, because I would like to get our guest analysts to, of course, to tell us what they think about this. Labour Party has outrightly come out. They came out outrightly yesterday before the court even finished their verdict. They outrightly made it known that, oh yes, we are heading to the Supreme Court. But now Labour PDP came out today to say they are furthering to Supreme Court. Let's get your own take on it. What do you think is going to happen? Is there, well, we already said there's not going to be something different.
You were quoting what Atiku Abubakar said. That it would be nice.
So it's respected.
Yeah, okay.
But not accepted.
He said the judiciary yesterday failed to restore confidence in free and fair elections, and the judgment is respected but not accepted.
But he didn't win. He didn't win. He's a sore loser, and he has not won the last 3 or 4 elections. He's a serial campaigner, so he didn't win. As I said, the opposition parties allowed Bola Tinubu to emerge as president. He didn't win. Neither did Peter Obi. Neither did Kwankwaso. We have to deal with the reality. If they had fused themselves together, Bola Tinubu would not have won. That's the takeaway.
Well, you see, I look at it differently.
Okay.
We are yet to know who actually won.
Okay.
That's my problem. And that's why I am angry with INEC. Because if INEC had allowed uploading of results, we would do the computation with ourselves, and we don't need anybody to give us the results. We would have. And again, at the tribunal, the results were not made available for any contest, because INEC is not duty bound to do so. And the opposition didn't seem to have submitted their own copies of the results. If they did, and the results were not taken into account, admitted, if they were found inadmissible, I am hoping that the Supreme Court will look at it differently. If the Supreme Court looks at the results, they may be able to tell us who actually won.
The problem is that they cannot introduce new evidence at the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court.
So that it's as dead as the dodo. They can't introduce new facts, new issues, new evidence anymore. The case is already settled.
So we still have to deal with the previous one.
The judgment that
Can I
was
ask you
delivered.
quickly? Those evidences that were struck out, you mean they can't feature in the Supreme Court again?
If those evidence were struck out,
yes,
and they were dutifully and lawfully struck out, it will remain struck out. The Supreme Court, of course, they might be one of the grounds of the appeal and say, oh, this evidence
was wrongly
struck out. That case,
so there's still a chance.
Then I doubt.
I am an incurable optimist.
That's all. I think we're stuck with this presidency for the next 4 years. It's about time to go back to the trenches. And whoever is not satisfied.
We are not going back to the trenches. I think Dr. Lord being optimistic.
The opposition needs to go back to the trenches and have less of a split of opposition.
Okay, all right. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been an insightful and powerful one with you on the program today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Polity. All right, our viewers at home, thank you for joining us on the Polity today. This is where we draw the curtain for today. And see you same time, same station tomorrow. I remain Messi. Babajide. Bye.